Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown, and today we're here to find out if Pep has somewhat revived modern football tactics. Okay, good morning, welcome back to the channel. Once again, thank you for all the support right off the top, especially on the last piece with Liverpool. The chances are when you're watching this, I will be suited and booted in London for an awards, which you guys have obviously been the reason why I'm there. So thank you very much. And again, we've got Neil Harris on to do two records today. We're going to talk about the changes under Pep Guardiola in Manchester City this season, why it's a bit different, if he has actually changed sort of his idea. And we've got an even better one, in my opinion, coming on, Elliot Anderson, who's been sort of talk of the town in the Premier League. So really do stick around for them. But today, we're going to talk about Pep Guardiola, and he has now managed 1,000 games with a disgusting 71.6% win rate, which is ridiculous, to be honest. But I want to speak today about something that, in my opinion, has changed with Pep Guardiola and why it has changed. And I think, for me, I've always been someone, when watching a City team, I don't really like sort of rigidity in football. I don't like rigid approaches in football. Now, Pep Guardiola this season, in my opinion, has changed to a not completely different idea, but City look completely different. And before Neil goes on to explain what them patterns look like and the changes look like on the board, I do want to stress how much of a big change this is for Pep Guardiola's Manchester City this season. So, on your screen right now, I have got per season averages, per game per season averages for each stat. So we can see possession average, they are averaging 56% possession. Their second lowest is 61. Massive drop, lowest of the Pep Man City era. Same with successful passes and same with high turnovers. However, the stats that are looking at the all-time high are dribbles and direct speed. So we're talking about a Manchester City team that is now playing very fast, less passes, less control on the ball. And how are they doing that?
It's funny, isn't it? Because when you say those things, you're thinking, okay, they're going long every single time, and they're the build up long ball, and it's not. Certainly looking back at the game of the weekend, what I would say is that the structure hasn't changed. So every single game this season, or certainly the last 10, 15 games, he's played 4-1-4-1. So that hasn't changed. The personnel may change from in there, but the change for me has just been the fluidity within the system. So we spoke about how, Pep's teams used to control games, and I've obviously come up against Manchester City teams in my United days, and we'd sort of know the patterns to a degree. Still very, very hard to play against them if it was executed well. But you sort of knew the patterns with the wingers coming down, the fullbacks going high, maybe the six coming short, etc. What I saw on Sunday and what I've seen in little bits in the Dortmund game, etc., was just complete fluidity within a structure of play. So people knew the positions, but the freedom to go and play in there. So, again, we know from a City team, previous City teams, they like to build up. I think the way that they did it on Sunday particularly was that Bernardo Silva was just unbelievable. Yeah. His running stats, I've got his running stats here from the game on Saturday, 12.76 kilometres. He's in his 8th, 9th season at the club. He's evergreen, he's getting better. This allowed Nico to sort of move and drag people away. He was continually getting the ball. He got the ball here once, on the edge of his...
I've seen him pick it off the goalkeeper once.
He just came and get it. It was magnificent. His performance was magnificent in terms of the way he got the ball. So his fluidity was, he was coming deep, he was playing 6, he was playing 8, he was playing 10, depending on that. Nico at times would then run away to create some space for him in there. You then had the situation where at times Doku would stay high, and then potentially O'Reilly would underlap. Nunes would underlap with Cherki if Cherki was high. But predominantly most of the time, and we'll look at some heat maps as well, is that Doku was in there, Cherki was in there. Yeah. Then we had the fullbacks who were a little bit higher, but still in their own half. You had then Nico a little bit higher. You had Foden in here as well, and you had, say, Silva in here as well. So it was very different in the fact that there was a very sort of mid part of the pitch. That was where all the players were. If you think back to the teams that have been successful in the Premier League for the last few years, obviously the Liverpool team, the City teams, the Arsenal team who were having a bit of success, etc. And even go back as far as the Leicester, it was all about stretching the pitch, a front three that would stretch the pitch in there. This was control in the middle of the park and picking the right moments when to go. you know, again, from a coaching term, I hope that's what I try and bring to this thing is that you talk about in football, find the spare man. Can we find the spare man all the time? And obviously, Manchester City down the years have been unbelievable in that. But it felt like there was more patterns to the play. This felt like he was giving his players a lot of freedom to not do what they want. Of course, it's Pep. So
of course, it's coached.
He's not.
Yeah.
It's coached, but it looked fluid in terms of it didn't feel unnatural that when Cherki was coming in here, that obviously Núñez was going forward and things. And like you said there, you know, the ball into Haaland could go in there, and then players would get closer to Haaland in there. So it's funny. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a complete change for Pep, but I just thought the fluidity and getting people closer together to make those short connections and then find the spare man and switch and play. And there was a magnificent piece of play that was when Nico O'Reilly was shielding it here from Salah in the corner.
Foden.
And that was, and they got it out from here. And it's funny because Nico actually played the ball back in, and I'm thinking, no. A coach mind's like, no, that's been in there too long. We need to get out from here. And he played it back in there, and then it come out here. It actually ended up being the goal.
It worked for the goal, didn't it?
It slowed down a little bit here, but it ended up being the goal. But that finding the spare man from that situation out there, that didn't even remind me of a City. That reminded me maybe of a Liverpool with that front three, switching the play, getting it out there, getting it to a Mane or Salah. So that didn't feel like City. But they were magnificent all over the park. And Silva and Doku, and we'll come on to Doku in a minute, were just, you know, high standard.
Okay, now we've got a segment on Football Manager 26, which has obviously come out on the 4th of November, so you can go and pick up the game and buy it and play it, and I've played it myself. Very, very good. Love the graphics and love sort of the UI changes, to be honest. And yeah, and today I want to speak about more or less Erling Haaland and more wider and broader on Erling Haaland. So obviously, we've got Neil Harris on, who used to be a coach and, well, still is a coach, sorry. I always do that. But we're going to speak about Erling Haaland and sort of the relentlessness of his goal scoring. And I've got a stat on your screen right now that says he has got 91 minutes per goal in the Premier League since he's joined Manchester City. So he's one goal away from the Premier League 100 club already, which is ridiculous. And to give you an idea of how good his numbers to minutes, goals to minutes ratio is, he's playing 91 minutes per goal. But the two players who follow him are John Duran and Donyell Malen, who are a bit skewed because of the amount of minutes they've played. But the two that follow them are Sergio Aguero, who's got probably the second truest best minutes per goal ratio, which is 108 minutes, sorry. And then following on from him is Thierry Henry with 122 minutes. We've seen a shift in what Manchester City have been doing this season, and that is the long ball aspect. So another stat on your screen, you can see that Manchester City's goalkeeper is playing 10% more long passes from the keeper's feet with 40.6%. And yeah, we're talking about sort of City and what they're doing recently, but do you want to touch on the inclusion of Donnarumma, Erling Haaland, and how Pep's sort of mesh them two together?
Yeah, I think there's a balance still. There's still the balance on, obviously, he loves to play, he loves to pass the ball. He'll say that till he's blue in the face. He wants to pass the ball. But I think there's also been a little bit of pragmatism in there that he's actually, you know, okay, well, if we actually can go over, and again, we've discussed it and we'll discuss it more about this midfield and this slight tweak to his formation. And obviously the signing of Cherki and obviously Doku being able to go and play a little bit closer to him potentially when the ball's in there. I think he's just been a little bit more pragmatic at times and just thinks, I'll go over the press, I'll get the ball forward quickly, and we'll just have a couple of different ways to play in there. But obviously, you know, Haaland's, he's just a cheat code, isn't he, in terms of the way that he does things. And you watch the game at a weekend and he looks like he's not interested at times, but he's so interested. Yeah. You know, the way that his body language sort of maybe lulls in top defenders to think that he's not really invested in this, and all of a sudden, you know, he's alive and he's quick to it and things. So you know, his record's ridiculous, and we still forget he's so young still.
I know.
I think we do forget.
He's still developing.
He's still developing.
He's still developing. I remember the Bournemouth at home game where I think he scored two in that game, and one was from like a Cherki flick on around the halfway line. Bournemouth tried to press up, but I think actually it was that goal. He was drawn so close to the ball, and he was actually playing link up like on the edge of the midfield, and he played that one touch and then spanning behind. And I think it's really interesting how you can have a player who, I think it says the most about, we've seen probably the most drastic shift in what Pep's idea has been since he started managing, despite having players like Lionel Messi, who obviously suits that more positional, fast tempo, one-touch passing. But I think since he signed Erling Haaland, I think Pep's only ever gone more in favour of him. I think when you look at the recruitment, I think Teji Reinders, a player who's somewhat of a ball carrier. You've got the wingers who are more direct players, but also Cherki, Foden, Bernardo, all love to sort of play inside from the wide areas. And I think the biggest praise you can give Erling Haaland is that Pep's looked at him and gone, I want to build this team completely around you.
And I think don't also forget about the Marmoush signing.
Yeah, of course, playing off him.
And obviously in the moment he's not involved in it, but that him unlocking certain elements there of the runs that Marmoush is making as well, which just allows Haaland different areas of the pitch to operate. And he isn't involved all the time. I don't think he's too fussed with that at times. He literally wants to get in and around the area. And there was a moment in Sunday's game against Liverpool where Cherki actually played a pass in it. It was a bad pass. It was sort of the wrong side of him. And the speed for a lad his size to actually turn that quickly. He was trying to get a shot off. I think he played it wide to Doku in the end. It was good defending actually in the end by Liverpool. But the speed of him and the thought process in and around those areas and in the frame of the goal was just ridiculous. Yeah,
I think one more thing before we do move on from this segment, but I've actually got Erling Haaland's touches and aerial duels won per 90 since he signed for Manchester City. Now, his touches is actually the second least he's had in the 4 seasons at Manchester City so far. So he's not actually touching the ball more often for Manchester City. It's probably roughly about the same. But his aerials is at an all-time high, which is 2.5 aerials won, which is showing, again, he is one of the best headers of the ball that I've seen. I'm not sure about you, but in terms of sort of the angles, when he's leaning back and he gets over the ball, his leap, his power, his FM stats, like the actual in-game stats, 19 natural fitness, 18 jumping reach, 19 pace, 20 determination, 19 anticipation. All them things around the 6-yard box. He's absolutely incredible when he's around there. And I think City have only ever leaned more into that. And I think we were mentioning before about the goalkeeper playing longer passes. City do want to still build out from the back, as we know. But they're not afraid that when it's a full court press and the ball gets worked out to a player like Ruben Diaz, who's a bit more of a pure defender, this ball to go straight into Haaland is on the defender's mind just as it's much on the keeper's mind. So while City are going more direct from the goalkeeper, Haaland's actually involved just the same, but they are playing more towards where you would consider his strengths are.
And I think if you think back to maybe the last season, certainly where obviously the struggles and the first little maybe the dip of the Pep era at City happened, and there was a couple of games certainly away at Arsenal, I think certainly away at Liverpool, and a couple of games where it was doing a Haaland touch map and he was having like 3-4 touches in the first half and people were saying that. Well, I think that was also about the isolation, and I think that's what Pep's maybe addressed there is the okay, we wanted him to still be high up the pitch and things, but we're now getting a few more players in and around him a little bit quicker. The angles are a little bit less bigger in terms of that. So I think there was an issue that he addressed, and he saw it last year. That's obviously now been addressed, and they look like they're ready to kick on for the rest of the season, don't they?
Yeah, no, beautifully explained. So that's it for the Football Manager 26 segment. Don't forget the game is now out and available to buy and play, so please do, and enjoy the rest of the video. Thank you very much. I want to throw a couple of screenshots on your screen right now just to illustrate more or less what Neil is talking about. So I've actually got a still image from the game against Bournemouth, and we can see Manchester City are compact on the right side of the pitch. They've got a lot of bodies in close proximity to each other. Haaland's a little bit off centre, but we can see Doku's position is on the right-hand side. He's crossed the midway point of the pitch, and that is showing that flexibility in positioning. And when City are using them close combinations and they get out, and when the ball's worked into Foden, we can see Nico O'Reilly on his own in probably 5-6 metres of space, on his own, ready to crash and arrive as the spare man into that final third. And I think one thing that we spoke about when we spoke to Neil on the actual podcast when we did it with you is talking about sort of small space players and small space mastery. And what I think personally, I think when you've got these sorts of players, I know Pep's going to get a lot of praise, but when you've got these sorts of players, Cherki, Foden, Bernardo Silva, in the centre of the pitch, Doku, obviously we'll come on to speak about him in isolation, but how important are the small space, involvements? Because I think when you look at City, they look a team that it's almost like a bomb. It like confines into this really small space, and then when they're ready to go, it blows up, and then they can get these players running down the flanks, arriving into space. Nunes has got a great engine on him, so he's all right doing that. Nico O'Reilly, you know, is an exceptional sort of player, what he's being asked to do, young age, really big player, but all the technical ability to go inside, outside. I just think that this is a Manchester City team that you can say they've been entertaining over the past few years. Winning is entertainment, of course. But when I watch this City team, I am like, wow, that's how I like football to be. That is how I like football to be.
I think there was just a bit more dynamism to him, really, in the way they played. Like you said, for me, it looked like they were playing off the cuff, which is crazy for a Pep team.
Yeah.
You know, we know that Pep loves control of the football and things, and it was at times, and you mentioned the turnover figures there, it was at times, it just felt like they had a lot of freedom. Obviously, we spoke about Silva in there to do that. But yeah, from a coaching perspective, you know, if you would do a coaching session, you would have quite a narrow pitch. A lot of people love doing narrow pitches and things like that. It felt like it was like a breakout game at times. So you do those sessions where you have, you know, a real tight area, maybe with a midfield three and maybe with a diamond or something like that, and then you break out to wingers and things. And in a session, you might have a fullback and a winger already there, particularly at younger ages and stuff. So yes, we've got a number of passes here, and now we're breaking ones. We've had 3 success, and it felt like that really. That like you said, that Nunes and O'Reilly were ready to go. You know, and their triggers when to go was magnificent. Like I say, at times, even when they pulled inside, they were still just not hesitant, but they had the timing of the runs was outstanding. And when they recognised good possession, that's when O'Reilly went. Yeah. That's when Nunes went from there. And you, like you say, the pair of them are athletes. And also, if you think about it, you know, City a few times have had obviously inverted in terms of, you know, you go back to Zinchenko and things, and which the very in which they did that didn't happen at weekend. The only time that happened was when they were making an underlapping run when the actual wingers stayed wide in there as well. So that was really interesting that he didn't really want them in there that time because he was happy with his midfield three and obviously the wide players coming in there as well. And again, one thing that was huge about that was that Haaland occupied Konate and Van Dijk. Then the problem came for Bradley and Robertson was because if they came in here, Cherki and Doku, for example, here now, it was a real stick or twist. It was do I pass him on to McAllister, do I pass him on to Wirtz or to Gravenberch and things. These two had a real problem because Haaland was pinning him. He was staying. He wasn't coming and getting involved as much like that. So he was really pinning him. And there was a real corridor of uncertainty. We talk about corridor of uncertainty in here, but there was a real corridor of uncertainty in here for Liverpool as to, you know, do I come in here, Robertson? Do I come in here, Bradley? And it just caused a huge problem. It was just so refreshing to see. And again, going back to academy football, youth play, about getting your best players on the ball as much as possible.
In the best areas.
Yeah. And then recognising those triggers to break out. So yeah, it was, like I say, I've watched the game back again. I've watched the Dortmund, and it was really different and exciting to see. But it was funny because Pep loves control, but it felt in a little bit, and I might be wrong, but it just felt a little bit like he was saying, okay, go and play a little bit more, bit now, within a structure, obviously.
Yeah, I think Pep Guardiola said after the Liverpool game, we can now play in different ways, and I think we are way more unpredictable, which I think is probably the key for this Manchester City team. When you watch them in them games, I think it was Bournemouth, Dortmund, Liverpool, where they played 3 back-to-back. The different sort of, obviously all at home, the different sort of like styles they were switching to throughout them 3 games. Against Bournemouth, they let Bournemouth sort of come on to them, defended in that 4-1-4-1, very compact, playing out long to Haaland, playing off the second balls. Dortmund, they did sort of the same, but when they were going in, it was a lot of these sort of inside runs from Foden, Doku. Obviously, Foden scored 2 goals from outside the box just here. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I was just speaking to you off camera about this. I was having a conversation with Jamie Hamilton, who's one of my sort of coaching inspirations. I really love the way he talks about football. And he was saying, he tweeted something about Bayern Munich's 2014 under Pep Guardiola, and he referenced a Hertha Berlin game. So I went and watched it, back, and I was seeing, quite frighteningly, the same things that we're seeing right here, which is Robben Ribéry, and Robben had the Doku role, which was staying out here, but then when the ball works up, he's coming inside. But then Ribéry had the Foden role, which was standing next to Xavi Alonso, getting the ball deep in build-up and then carrying it forward and then arriving in the middle of the pitch. I might have a few screenshots on the screen right now for you to show you that even though they were wingers, they're not playing as inside forwards. I think that's like almost a degrading term for these players. They are just false wingers. Yeah. They're just everywhere. And I think the amount of times if we look at their shape, if you have it like this, the amount of times the wingers actually cut across the centre of the pitch and swap and occupy the same side of the pitch, that for me seems freakish for a Pep team.
Well, you referenced the first time I was obviously on the podcast with you and Amir, and I spoke about ball carriers. I think I've spoke about it last time. If you can have people who can carry the ball from the middle of the pitch, well, Silva can do that, Foden can do that, Nico can do that to a degree, obviously. But then if you can add Doku in there, in the middle of the pitch, you've got 5 players who can carry the ball.
Yeah.
And what happens with carrying the ball is, everybody loves breaking lines passes now. It's the buzzword, isn't it? Like that. But there's nothing finer than breaking the lines by dribbling. And going past people and getting the ball up the pitch. And that's probably why Haaland's so happy to be up here, because he's confident that actually people are going to break lines with the way that they're carrying the ball, which is then going to potentially draw out a centre back, which allows him to run off the back there or runs in between them and things. So just having 4 or 5 ball carriers in the middle of the park, and I say, why isolate them? Yes, maybe you can get in 1v1s over there, but the problem that caused for Bradley and Robertson by having them in field here, and I watched it back, and the timing was impeccable. Sometimes, if you're not going to get enough of the ball, having too many people in there, it can get congested and things. And you say, well, no, we need a bit of width and height, etc. But the timing at which they moved to come and receive the ball was huge for me as well.
If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. Okay, moving on into the final segment, and we want to isolate one player because I think Arsenal away, Manchester United at home, Liverpool at home, he has produced sort of 3 of some of the best performances, not just winger performance. Jeremy Doku, absolutely exceptional. And I want to get your point on this because you're a coach and you love ball carriers, as we've just said there. How impressed are you with the jitteriness of him, if that makes sense? Like how fast he moves on the dribble, when he moves from side to side, when he cuts it. He's brilliant.
The modern day, you're looking at profiles for players.
Yeah.
You're looking, are they athletic? Do they have, super speed? He has it in abundance. I thought it was a coming of age performance on Sunday, and I think he's been leading up to it. I thought it was I've always thought, is there not a lack of trust from Pep at times with him, but there's always, he knows what a wonderful player he is, but sometimes either the handbrake's been put on him or maybe his own decision making or whatever. I thought Sunday was a coming of age performance. I've watched it back. I watched the full game back, and then I went and watched his clips. Ideally, we've got to remember this is a Conor Bradley coming up against who
just had Vinny
3-4 days before had Vinny Jr. in his back pocket, who'd obviously done Mbappe last year, was coming in. I've watched it again, and I don't think Conor Bradley had a bad game.
No,
that's how high Doku's performance was. Conor Bradley, if you watch him, he got tight, he got aggressive, he got his arm across, but Doku's low centre of gravity, the pace at which he moved, the way he was able to manipulate the ball. There was one that Mamardashvili made a save at his near post, where he'd actually stopped it, but he did a stud roll and spun and hit it with his weaker foot. It was just high level. But honestly, I would say to any coaches out there for a start, obviously, if you're looking at wingers, and I'm quite vocal on social media and in the coach education stuff about the modern inverted winger that we were getting into a period where inverted wingers were running up to the full-backs, stopping, passing back, and feeling that's enough to do. He excited me. He excited me, gave me a buzz back for an inverted winger again. And honestly, as a coach, but if you are a young player, grassroots, academy football, try and go and watch it. I'm sure it'll be clips on YouTube now. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Obviously topped off by his goal, but if you think about the penalty, you think about Mamardashvili's save, but the other stuff that he did and his work rate as well to get back in, you obviously have to do that in a Pep Guardiola team, of course. But honestly, I thought it was coming of age. I messaged you last night when we were talking, and I said, I'm struggling to think of a better winger performance for a long time in the Premier League. I think you could probably go back to maybe a Salah, a Mane, maybe a Mahrez at his peak, and obviously you go back to your Henrys and things like that. Obviously Ronaldo's and stuff, but I'm trying to think for a long time who's somebody genuinely excited me of being an inverted winger, because I was starting to get to a point where I'm not too sure if it's still connected inverted wingers now anymore. But that performance on Sunday, go and watch it. It was special.
We had a sort of a conversation in the office the other day, and it was about who's produced the best individual performance. And I was going through sort of the games, I was going back game week, and I ended up with 3 Doku games and not really any other player.
Just from this season?
Just from this season. And I was just scratching my head, and I was like, I remember him in that Arsenal away game, he was basically leading every attack for City behind Haaland. He ended up playing up front on his own, which says how much trust Pep had in him after subbing off Haaland and going to a back 5. The game against Manchester United, we all remember sort of this role where he's starting wide, drifting in front, asking the question, the back 3. Sensational on that day. And I think just the maturity in the performances, I think you said there, it's always been the decision making with him, but I think when he's inside now, everything just is flowing a lot easier, he's working a lot easier. The goal scoring, even when he played in League One for Ron, I didn't think that I didn't think he was much of a goal scorer, especially when he's in these parts of the pitch. I think he's a byline hitter, a cutback player, but he scored this goal against Napoli. It's a compact box Champions League game. I think they might have even been down to 10 men at this point. And he does like 3 or 4 chops, feints, like turns on the ball that I've never really seen a player that agile. And obviously, like if you're looking at the most agile players that I've ever seen, I'm already looking at sort of, that's Messi type body work in small spaces in terms of how he turns on the ball. Obviously, the overall package, probably not. But in terms of on the ball, dribbling at high speed, the turning, the agility in them close areas, I'm amazed. I'm amazed by it.
The high speed was ridiculous. I thought it was good on Sunday when I watched it back. And like I say, Bradley's not slow.
No.
Szoboszlai at times was coming to cover and things like that. It was high speed. It was, and that's the thing, you're talking about, maybe trying to do it. It doesn't matter how old you are, how good you are. Confidence is huge.
Yep.
And if you're now starting to feel, that every time you step on a pitch, you've got the beating of your full back, you're making good decisions. I'm sure Haaland's talking to him more now in terms of runs like that and things. It was just, it was high level.
I remember he's just before we wrap up, he said on his Sky Sports interview after the game with Erling Haaland, he stood next to him and he said, I love the big games because they're more exposed, and he loves playing in a more exposed game. He actually said he thinks it's more beautiful, and I think that is obviously why he's playing so well against the bigger teams. Yeah. There's more space, there's more high risk involved, and I think he loves that sort of end to the game. He loves the craving for space and big games and making an impact.
But just quickly, from a coaching point of view there as well for your wingers. So wingers can get isolated. So if you think about a winger's confidence, I'm talking about young players here now. If you're getting the ball and maybe every time you get the ball, you're not successful, or you weren't successful that time, you don't get the ball for another 3 minutes. And then the next time, maybe either you're not successful because of the fullback doing well against you, or the centre defender doing well against you. That can then sort of, you're waiting again maybe another 2.5 minutes to get on the ball, and you start second guessing yourself. Just the sheer volume that he was on the ball meant that if there was a couple of times he was unsuccessful, it didn't matter because he was going to get it again in another 20, 30 seconds and things. It was a very, very quick, because I'm old. There was John Barnes when he was at Watford, compared to when he went to Liverpool, and there was a story about that he said, at Watford, I knew I had to be really, really high level, because when I got it, I might not get the ball again for another 2-3 minutes, depending on the team we played. When I went to Liverpool, I then knew I was going to get the ball back maybe every 20, 30 seconds, so I could maybe try different things. I could experiment, which I think is what Doku's doing by coming into those areas. He's got so much more of the ball.
Yeah, much more of the ball, much more efficiency than probably every winger at the moment. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown, and do stick around for next week when we analyse Elliot Anderson with Neil Harris again, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.